Addis Business Talk with Khalid and Marid on Afro FM 105.3. We'll be talking to policymakers, investors, business leaders, and entrepreneurs to bring you the latest development taking place in the Ethiopian economic and business climate, and more importantly, what it means to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. This is Addis Business Talk with Khalid and Marid every Thursday morning on Afro FM 105.3, the first all-English radio and podcast business show in Ethiopia. My name is Marid Bisrat, along with my co-host Khalid Mawi. Thank you for joining us. The show is brought to you by Pragma Investment Advisory, an investment management and advisory firm based in Addis Ababa, along with our partners, 251 Communications, a very prominent PR and marketing firm also based in Addis Ababa. On today's episode, we will talk about the recent trends that is shaping the banking and financial sector in Ethiopia, the effort taken by the Ministry of Finance and the National Bank of Ethiopia, Ethiopia's central bank, to establish a capital market in Ethiopia, and also we'll talk about the recent change in currency note by the central bank and what it means for the financial sector and the economy as a whole. To talk about these issues and our other related topics, we have invited Mr. Abdulmenan Hamza. Mr. Abdulmenan is considered to be a pundit in Ethiopia's finance and banking sector, has more than 20 years experience in audit, consulting, and finance, both in Ethiopia and in UK. Currently, he is account manager at Portobello Group Ltd, a property investment company based in London. He is also a part-time doctoral student at Edinburgh Business School, Heriot-Watt University, UK. His doctoral research project focused on Ethiopian economy in the financial sector. Abdulmenan is also certified chartered accountant and fellow member of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, ACCA, Glasgow, UK. He studied his BA from Addis Ababa University in accounting and BACC in applied accounting from Oxford's Brookes University, also based in UK. He has written on Ethiopian banking, finance, and financial sector regulations, business and economies for more than 10 years. He has been featured on many major medias, including BBC, The Economist, Africa Report, locally Addis Fortune, Ethiopian Business Review, Bloomberg, and The Reporter, and many others. Also, Abdulmenan, thank you for joining us on Addis Business Talk from London.
It is my pleasure. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I must say, I'm an avid follower of your publications and comments since studying in college. I remember reading your comments and publication on Addis Fortune, Ethiopian Business Review. When I studied in my first year, second year, I really followed your pieces, piece. I must say, you put the context and the recent issues in the banking and the financial sector to the point, and it's really interesting. I must ask you, what is the passion behind to write all those publications, and what makes you decide to join the world of finance as a professional career? And if you could tell us the company you're working at London.
Thank you so much. It was around 2008 and 2009. After I came to England in 2006, I was reading at that time a lot on different topics on economics, business, finance, including philosophy and history. After reading, for many years, at some point I decided, okay, I'm reading a lot, and I had to share my ideas to, the people, to many people. So someone has to share an idea, especially the area he knows very well. So the best area to share is in area of finance and business and accounting, which I've studied for many years. So the first time I wrote an article was in 2010. Even before 2010, a few times I sent letter to the editor to Addis Fortune, and they were published on Addis Fortune. After that time, it encouraged me a lot to write on the topic. And the first article was on share companies. At that time, it was very popular to form a share company and float shares, especially around 2008, 9, and 10. So the first article I wrote was on share company, which I know very well because of a finance professional. After that, I expanded the topic I write. So that is the motive why I started writing on articles. The company I work for is a property investment company. Mainly it invests commercial and residential properties. We develop properties and rent properties at the same time and sell properties. So we sell mainly residential properties and rent commercial properties. So we do renting and development in a premium location in London, which is Westbourne Grove, High Street, Kensington, and Notting Hill Gate in London. It is a well-known area. So this is the company. And I'm an accounts manager, and I worked for more than 10 years in the company. After working for 2 years as management accountant in another property company. Before that, I worked as external auditors for roughly 9 years, and I progressed from assistant auditor to audit manager in one of the audit firms in Ethiopia. Currently, the name is changed, but at that time, Taddasa Walde Gabriel Company. So this is my professional life.
Very interesting, Abdulmenan. Thank you for that background. Now, moving to one of the most timely issues that happened in Ethiopia this month. As you know, the government decided to change our currency notes to brand new ones. As you may know, many have applauded the measure, yet others have criticized it for not necessarily being an accurate decision to solve the root problems behind the necessity to change the notes in the first place. I'm really curious, what's your take on this?
Let us start from the assumptions or the claims for changing currency notes. The government claimed a lot of issues. Number one, to control illegal business activities, money laundering, illicit financial flows, one of the reasons. The second reason is to control inflation. These are the main reasons. There are other minor reasons for change of the currency. As far as I believe, currency demonetization is made mainly to increase security future of the currency. Many countries undertake this process. For example, the United Kingdom has been doing currency demonetization since 2016, starting from the £5 note, then £10 note, then to £20 notes. So to increase the security feature is one of the reasons. The second is if there is a suspicion of counterfeit money in the economy. And the third reason is like the Ethiopia war, before the Ethiopia war, that's the political and economic reasons. And it was the right move at that time. So these are the main reasons for changing a currency. There is a suspicion of counterfeit money to increase the security feature of the currency. And the third is like serious economic reasons. So the government said to control the illegal monies hoarded from illegal businesses, to control illicit financial flows and other causes. The second is to control inflation. These are the main claims of the government. So let us start from the first one. Number one, we don't have adequate evidence on the amount of monies hoarded, in cash form obtained from illegal activities. We don't have any evidence. The government doesn't have any evidence. So without having evidence, taking such a massive measure, which is change of a currency, which costs a lot of money, and it is administration, and it is planning, it needs execution. It costs a lot in terms of direct costs and indirect costs to the economy, because it affects the economy. It slows down the economy. Even recently, we understood that some items, the price of some items went up, like gold. Even the price of cars went up. In remote areas, even the price of cattle went up. So it disrupts economic activities, it has direct and indirect costs. So without having adequate information about the amount of money hoarded from illegal activities, taking such a massive measure costs the economy. The second reason is controlling inflation. Controlling inflation is caused by different reasons. Number one, for example, shortage of food, which is supply factor. And the second one is availability of money in the economy. Or when the money in the economy grows faster than the economy grows, inflation happens. So by controlling cash outside of the banking system, we can't control inflation for a number of reasons. The main cause of inflation is borrowing from the central bank by the government. So it's not cash outside the banking system that causes inflation. So the second claim is also wrong. And the third is a lot of government officials and the bankers claim that money outside the banking system is a lot. I don't think that is a lot. If you see the data for the past 10 years, money outside the bankers as a proportion of total money, which is saving, current account, and money, cash in banks' hands and in the people's hands, went down the past 10 years from 26% to roughly around 11-12%. So as a proportion, the amount of money in hand went down. So the third claim is not convincing. So based on this evidence, what I believe is gradual demonetization of money is much better. Number one, it doesn't affect the economy directly. It's because it's a small procedure. Number two, the government can stretch the printing cost over a number of years. Number two. Number three, it doesn't cause any uncertainty in the economy. So I would prefer gradual change of currency instead of changing in one go.
Interesting. So as you know, the government has injected liquidity into the banking system last year, and the banking was facing the entire banking system was facing a liquidity crisis. First, let's talk the reason why this happened, and do you think is because the credit on this bank's balance sheet has grown significantly and they cannot accommodate the demand from the depositor? What is the technical reason behind? And do you think, as you mentioned, the change of the currency will alleviate this problem?
Okay, the main cause for liquidity problem at the beginning of this year, which is in January 2020, is mainly expansion of credits over the past 2 years. If we see the data of the private banks and the government bank, the credit level increased so much, more than 70% of the deposit, which is very unusual. On top of that, private banks were required at that time to invest in NBE bond, which is a 5-year bond. So if you are the total credit plus the investment in the NBE or the NBE bond, almost 100% of the deposit were invested in these two investments. And the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia were required to acquire corporate bonds from Ethiopian Electric Power Corporation, like Sugar Corporation, and provide different types of loans to state-owned enterprises. So the expansion of the credit is the main reason for liquidity problem at the beginning of last year. But before that, it wasn't felt. The liquidity problem was not felt because of, especially in winter time, Ethiopia winter time, the demand for cash decreases because of seasonal reasons. But around Christmas or December, January, February, the demand for cash increases. Because of that, the liquidity problem felt at that time. And there was also a tax season, dividend payment season. So the main culprit for the liquidity problem is expansion of credit. Now, when we come to the demonetization issue, it won't alleviate the liquidity problem because Ethiopian economy is a cash-based economy. As long as the economy remains a cash-based economy, the liquidity problem will not be solved because people require cash. The demonetization process brings in the cash to the banking system. If the economy needs the cash, it will leave the banking system. So it will be back to square one. If the government prohibits withdrawing money using different means, I am sure it will cause a lot of problem within the economy. It might even slow down the economy. So it won't solve the problem. The main problem is credit expansion. The best method is to increase the liquidity requirements of the banks instead of demonetization or forcing people to bring their cash to the banking system.
Interesting, Abdulmenan. Another, what I would call groundbreaking announcement is that after a number of supposed negotiations, the National Bank has finally given the green light to the Ethio Telecom. Of course, the soon-to-be privatized but still national monopoly telecom company in Ethiopia was given the green light to start mobile money services. I'm curious, what would your assessment be of this decision as it relates to the economy as a whole, especially the digital economy, the financial industry, and banking?
It's a very interesting decision by the National Bank to give a license to the Ethio Telecom to provide this money banking services. Of course, Ethiopia Telecom has millions of accounts with individuals and companies. So the best option is Ethio Telecom to provide these digital services because other companies, we don't have that big companies. So the best option within the economy is the Ethio Telecom. So I believe this is the right decision by the National Bank. Especially, it will give access to a lot of people who live in rural areas who don't have access to conventional bank services. So branch expansion is not practical in all cases. So the best option is to expand this digital services. So Ethiopian Telecom is the best option if they successfully execute, this project or this service. So this is a good move, like M-Pesa in Kenya. So this is what I believe.
Okay. So, do you think I'll ask you before we change the topic and talk about the capital market formation in Ethiopia? Do you think by Ethio Telecom having this, Ethio Telecom joining the payment platform and the National Bank coming up with different directives for other companies, other private companies to join the payment infrastructure space, do you think it will increase the do you think it would increase the banking people who's joining the banking system significantly? Because right now we're standing around 22%. That's like the people living in the urban area. So we can safely say that the people who are living in the rural area don't have a banking account. Do you think this will contribute for the growth of for the people in the rural area to join the banking system?
Yes, I do believe if you see the national financial inclusion strategy of the National Bank, which was published in 2017, 1/3 of the adult population in the country do not have a bank account, which is 1/3, 35%. No, 2/3 of the only people who has bank account is 1/3. 2/3 of the people don't have a bank account. Yep. So branch expansion is not a realistic option because banks can, number one, private banks are profit-making entities. Number two, some places are inaccessible for opening branches and they are not profitable to open in some places, in many of the places in the rural areas. So the best option to increase financial inclusion is digitalization of the monetary and financial system. One of the institutions that has the capacity to expand this financial inclusion is Ethiopian Telecom. I hope the National Bank will provide to other network providers to operate as many service providers, I hope. So at the moment, the Ethio Telecom is one of the big companies that have the resource and the network or the capacity to provide this service. So it makes a lot of difference, especially to people who live in the rural areas, but people in the urban areas have access to the banking service.
Let's come back after the commercial break. Stay tuned.
Pragma Investment Advisory, a financial and business advisory firm focused on promoting risk-adjusted returns and long-term value-yielding investment opportunities in Ethiopia. Pragma accounts for critical value-add propositions to its clients' portfolios by delivering on a wide array of solutions ranging from deal origination and closing to market entry strategies, transaction advisory, project management, and handholding. For further information, our website is pragma-advisory.com. If you have any questions, please email us on info@pragma-advisory.com.
This business talk.
Interesting. So moving ahead and changing topics. Now let's talk about the formation of the capital market. As you know, the Ministry of Finance and National Bank of Ethiopia is working in drafting a proclamation to establish a capital market authority. Just to give our listeners a background on that, is the proclamation states for the establishment or the creation of a capital market authority, just like of ACC for the Securities Exchange Commission for United States. That's similar like that, an authority which regulates the financial market and the capital market. So in the proclamation states also the authority will be responsible to establish Ethiopian Securities Exchange, an exchange platform where publicly traded companies will be traded, their shares will be traded. How do you see this development in Ethiopia's financial development, in Ethiopia's financial sector development? Do you think it's the right step? And do you think the proclamation tries to address the main components in terms of establishing the legal and regulatory framework and building the required infrastructure to open this market to the public. What's your take on this?
I see it within the framework of the recent financial sector reforms, or even if we broaden it, within the recent economic reforms. So many people has been demanding the government to set up a stock exchange, probably from the end of 1990s. But the government has been reluctant because of ideological reasons, because the government believed in interventionist economic policies and the closed financial system. Under closed financial system, the main players are banks. Open financial system or market-based financial system, the main players are stock exchange like in America or England, which is countries of Anglo-Saxon tradition. So we have a banking-based financial system and a market-based financial system. So Ethiopia has been pursuing a banking-based financial system mainly for ideological reasons, because the government controls the banking system easily for mobilization of savings and directing that saving to areas which are prioritized by the government. But under market-based financial system, it's very difficult to direct resources in areas preferred by the government. So I see the reform within a broader framework of economic reforms. Under the current economic reforms, setting up financial capital market and stock exchanges is the right move. How much it will be successful in terms of trading volume, in terms of liquidity, in terms of other parameters, is a different matter. So it is the right decision by the government. So we have two things in the proclamation. One is the regulatory authority, which is capital market regulatory authority. The second one is the actual stock exchange. So there will be two entities that will be formed. One is as a platform for trading shares and as a security. The second one is a regulatory body. So if we see within the broader economic reforms, it's the right decision. It is inevitable.
Interesting, Abdulmenan. Now, at a macroeconomic level, sort of generally speaking, the announcement of the privatization process of a number of state-owned enterprises, as you know, has been subjected to continuous criticism, arguing that the government, should not sell companies that are built with public funds, and many other types of arguments being made there. And then on the other side, of course, others say that it's generally good for the public, as private companies usually encourage and bring in efficiency and opportunities. And of course, competition breeds excellence. Let's hear your view on this.
Okay, privatization. Yeah, I've been following the criticisms against privatization, citing the examples of many countries. If privatization has been done in the right way and in accountable and transparent way, I do believe privatization is very important, except probably few companies like Ethiopian Airlines. The national pride probably is better to keep Ethiopian Airlines without privatization. But many of the companies, especially state-owned enterprises, have to be sold off to investors for different reasons. Number one, if you see, like from Sugar Corporation to Fertilizer Corporation to Metic, I can give many examples of state-owned enterprises which are examples of corruption, waste, and efficiency. So, and of course, lack of accountability. So if the government sells these companies off to private investors, the private investor will improve their performance, increase competition, increase efficiency, and the end increase welfare to the country. So many of the companies have to be sold, I believe, except a few companies like Ethiopian Airlines. So privatization is very important, especially like a country like Ethiopia, where the level of accountability is less, the level of inefficiency is very high, waste is very high. Many of the companies, if we study, are riddled with this problem. So privatization is, I do believe, they have to be sold off to private investors.
Great. Okay, let's talk about our policy bank, Development Bank of Ethiopia. As you know, the bank has faced considerable challenge in terms of bad loans issued a couple of years ago, and almost the NPL, the non-performing loan, stand around 40% of its balance sheet. So as part of the reforming the bank, recently has got a new CEO, Dr. Johannes, who's the former vice governor for the central bank, also the chief economist, and also the council of ministers has decided as part of its decision to recapitalize the bank and to make it efficient and make it ready to foster and give loans for development, especially for mid-sized and small-sized enterprises. And also, the bank, National Bank, has decided not to suspend the 27% mandated bond bank from the private bank, which is given to the development bank. Do you think all these reforms, which is currently carried out by the National Bank, also by the board and also the CEO, do you think is the right direction? And do you think Development Bank of Ethiopia is playing the role it's supposed to play as a policy bank fostering the development, or do you think it should be done more? What's your take?
Yeah, the Development Bank, it had problem even before 2010, but around 2010, it was restructured and repositioned to play a critical role in development of the countries. Policy banks are available in many countries for a specific purpose, targeting certain industries or targeting some social goals. So Development Bank of Ethiopia is supposed to play a very crucial role, especially targeting commercial farming, manufacturing, mainly private ones. So for this reason, it was structured in 2010, 2009. But between 2010 and until recently, the bank has been in a big problem. For example, bad loans to textile firms, agricultural firms. Even recently, it made a loss. So the Development Bank of Ethiopia has not playing the right role. So it has to be reformed without doubt. Second, the source of funding for the bank has been coming from private banks to National Bank of Ethiopia. Unfortunately, the National Bank of Ethiopia transferred only 2/3 of the funds collected from the private banks and 1/3 kept with the National Bank, which means the Development Bank of Ethiopia, when they're using the resources efficiently. If we see the balance sheet of the Development Bank of Ethiopia, a big chunk of even that money has been invested in treasury bills, which means the Development Bank of Ethiopia has been inefficient in using resources. It was getting the loan from private banks at 3% and recently at 5%, and it was investing in 1% treasury bills, which is a lot of amount of money. So the bank has been inefficient for two reasons. Number one, for building up of lots of non-performing loans. Second one, investing in low yield treasury bills. So the Development Bank has to be reformed, no doubt. So how it has to be reformed is a different matter. I still believe it can play a big role within the economy, as long as there are certain sectors like small businesses, medium businesses that has to be supported by the government. The Development Bank of Ethiopia can target this area of the economy and provide some long-term loans at preferential interest rates. What is very important is how the Development Bank of Ethiopia can get a resource to fund this operation. Number one, the government budget. As the government profits, it will increase its capital to 26 billion. It's a very good source of income. Second is the Development Bank of Ethiopia can get funding by selling or issuing bonds to the public or to financial institutions, to insurances, or it can look for as a source of funding from abroad. So it has to look for a source of funding, one of the areas that requires structuring. The second is the operation of the bank itself. It has been controlled by politicians. So a policy bank, which is being controlled by a politician, highly likely to make decisions based on political priorities instead of economic motives. So this also requires some restructuring. Politicians, of course, control the policy bank, but they have to set a broad mission rather than involving in the nitty-gritty things of the bank. So this area requires also restructuring. So I believe the new president of the bank will make a lot of difference. He has experience in the policy bank as chief economist, and he knows the banking sector very well. So I hope he will make a big difference to the bank.
Addis Business Talk.
Abdulmenan, a straightforward question. How do you assess, in your expertise, the impacts of COVID-19 in Ethiopia's economy? And as a country, can we do better?
Obviously, some areas of the country, like the hospitality industry, have been affected. Ethiopian Airlines have affected seriously. The hotels and tourism sector have affected seriously. Of course, it affected us a lot. It affects the people who live abroad, so the remittance will be affected. Foreign direct investment will be affected. So it affected us a lot, no doubt.
Okay. Now, over the past few years, I think this is, the elephant in the room. One of the major challenges in Ethiopia's sort of drive towards growth and development is the forex crunch. So, what are the ways, in your professional opinion, to solve this problem? What are the major reasons that are behind this issue in the first place? And maybe sort of relating to this, there are announcements by the government to float the birr in about 3 years' time. We don't know exactly the modality in terms of how that will happen. But what's your take on that in general? And does the flotation kind of help alleviate these forex issues?
Won't alleviate, obviously, because Ethiopia mainly exports our agricultural commodities, and we have a lot of problems, especially in the supply chain, from production to export. So we export mainly agricultural commodities, which worth around $3 billion a year. And other sources of foreign currency are remittance, foreign direct investment, aid, and loans. So Ethiopia relies on agricultural commodities with a lot of problems. So, and we import strategic items, for example, petroleum, fertilizer, medicine, capital equipment. So Ethiopia cannot reduce. The main rationale for floating foreign Ethiopian birr is they believe, the National Bank and the World Bank and IMF believe it will reduce the amount of the import and increase the amount of the export. That's not true. As I said, Ethiopia relies on basic agricultural commodities, and which is riddled with a lot of problems, supply problems. So by floating Ethiopian birr, we can't increase the export, and at the same time, we can't decrease the import. It will only cause depreciation of birr. The depreciation will be translated into inflation and causes a lot of economic problems. Ethiopia should focus on expanding the manufacturing export. We have to work very hard to increase the manufacturing export. That is the only way, that is the sustainable way to solve this problem. So the manufacturing export is the area what the government should do.
I'm glad that you mentioned the inflation aspect. I mean, the country is facing a significant inflation problem compared to, a few years ago. Now, on a monthly basis, we're standing 20 to 21%, and the yearly inflation is going up. Last year was around 15, 16%. Do you think enough is being done in terms of, from a monetary policy aspect, controlling or reducing the impact of inflation, or do you think it should be done more? What could the government do instead of what they're doing right now?
I do believe the National Bank probably has failed miserably in this area in fighting inflation. In the proclamation that reestablished the National Bank, which was issued in 2008, one of the responsibilities of the National Bank is maintaining the stability of birr, the stability of Ethiopian birr. The National Bank has failed in this task because there's another provision in the proclamation, which is the National Bank is accountable to the Prime Minister, which is the executive branch of the government. So, and even in the proclamation, it lifted the limit on government borrowing from the central bank. Because of these reasons, the National Bank has been doing two contradictory things at the same time. Number one, try to control inflation, and at the same time, provides loan to the government. So because of these contradictory things, the National Bank failed to control inflation. So the National Bank could have done a lot if it was independent and there was a limit on government borrowing from the central bank. I still believe the National Bank has to do a lot to control inflation. It should be a government priority. One of the priorities that the government should focus is inflation, and the National Bank has to do a lot to control it.
Good. Abdulmenan, you've mentioned at the beginning of the show that one of your first writings was about shared companies. Let me ask you a question about the commercial code and the fact that it has been now in revision and soon to be approved, hopefully. And it deliberates, of course, on business types other than bankruptcy and other deliberations. How necessary was it after many decades to actually revise this code, and how encouraging is it going forward now for the country?
It's very essential, especially if you want to set up a stock exchange, the security exchange authority. You need to revise the commercial code. I think it's more than 50 years old. The current commercial code is more than 50 years old. A lot of things have changed over this period. So one of the areas that should be changed is the commercial code, without doubt. If you see the details, some of them are, probably half of it is outdated. So one of the areas that requires is revision of the commercial code, without doubt, in a way that is suitable for current business environment and for the current level of economic development. So that needs serious revision.
I hope hopefully we will see it. We'll see it in the business and the economic environment, fully issued by the Parliament very soon. So let me ask you a question in terms of a policy, because on this show we love to ask people's in terms of what if you become a policymaker. Imagine yourself if you become a governor of the Central Bank of National Bank of Ethiopia. As you know, when an economy grows, certainly one thing we see in other economies is the development and the strengthening of them, and also the creation of a very sound, modernized financial and banking system, and that mostly falls on the central bank. If you were to become a governor of the National Bank of Ethiopia, what would you do in terms of to create a very sound financial system for Ethiopia? Because Ethiopia is a very big country, and in order for us to accommodate all this economic change and to make our wealth creation very fair and equitable, we need a very strong financial system. I mean, you're living in a city where they created the modern central bank, Bank of England. And there's a lot to be learned, and there's a lot to be done, in my opinion, in terms of making sure we create a very strong financial system. What would you do differently? Or how do you see it?
Okay, a very difficult question because I'm not in that position. But no doubt I would prioritize two things. One is inflation, the second is stability of the financial system.
Okay.
These areas would be my first priority. At any cost, I would do everything to bring inflation under control, roughly 7% within a short period of time. Under 10%, within a short period of time. That would be my priority. I would do anything. And the second is making the financial system is very stable. Because currently a lot of banks are coming and joining the industry, microfinance institutions are in the banking industry. So that worries me so much, because increased competition within the financial system, a risk to the stability of the system. So these two things I would do if I were a central banker. Well, these are broad objectives, but the details will be, a lot of experience will be drawn from other countries which brought the inflation down. So, but as a broad objective, these things would be my priorities.
Nice. You mentioned that, as you know, like the new players are joining the market in terms of banking space. There are a number of Islamic bankings coming up. I think Hijra is about to start very soon, and the others will join very soon. How do you see that development and the contribution it will make for the financial and banking sector in Ethiopia, and how will that change the credit allocation and the credit facility?
I see a lot of Muslim, I can say many of the Muslim people do not use the banking service, especially the loan or saving account, unless they're interest free for the religious reasons. So allowing Islamic Sharia compliant financial products and financial service providers will enhance financial inclusion, especially where Muslim people are predominantly the majority. In Addis, a lot of Muslim people do not use, for example, financing from banks because of religious reason. Interest is included in the loan. So Islamic financial products will include millions of people into the financial system. This will help increase financial inclusion, help enhance the economy, develop the economy. Of course, as a right, financial inclusion is nowadays considered as a right to the people. So these Islamic financial service providers will help majority of the Muslim population to get into the banking network. So it has a lot of contribution.
We hope to see it very soon as well. So this is going to be our final question. As you know, there's the Central Bank, National Bank of Ethiopia, has announced that it will create an agency for the agency would serve as an insurance for depositors for deposit that is made in the banking system, just like of the Federal Depository Insurance Commission in the United States. So it's same will be rolled out very soon. Do you think this is the right time, or it is overdue? How do you see this in terms of making our financial system very stable and very sound, not only for our generation, but for many generations to come?
You see, deposit insurance is set up to protect the depositors.
Yes.
The main responsibility of the central bank is number one responsibility is protecting the depositors. If depositors do not have trust on the financial system, they won't keep their money with bankers. So the National Bank has to protect depositors. One of the means is deposit insurance, which means up to a certain level, depositors are protected if a bank goes under. So deposit insurance is very essential. But currently, Ethiopian financial system, currently at the moment, is very stable. But in the future, probably in the coming 5-10 years, because of the number of bankers joining the industry, probably the sophistication of the industry, because increased sophistication of the industry will undermine stability. At that time, we need a deposit insurance. So it's a good measure, a good step taken by. Probably the National Bank is expecting the banking industry to be more, more competitive, more risky. So it's a preemptive action taken by the central bank. So it is a good step.
Interesting. Well, that unfortunately wraps up our segment for today. We wish we had a longer time period to discuss these very interesting topics. Abdulmenan Hamza, Accounts Manager at Portobello Group Ltd, and an expert in finance, economics, and banking. Thank you very much for joining us here on Addis Business Talk.
Oh, thank you so much, Khalid. Thank you so much, Marud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Addis Business Talk.